The quiet species. The galaxy did not fear humanity. In the great chambers of the Galactic Council, powerful species spoke about wars, trade routes, and expanding borders. Massive holograms showed fleets that could darken entire star systems. Empires argued about territory near the galactic core. Ancient races spoke proudly of their thousand-year histories. And then there was Earth, a small blue planet near the edge of a quiet spiral arm. Humans had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. Their ships were functional but plain. Their weapons were standard plasma cannons and simple missile systems. Their colonies were few and fragile. Compared to the giants of the galaxy, humanity looked like a child standing among warriors. "They are ambitious," one council member once said. "But harmless," another replied. That word spread. Harmless. Human ships rarely entered contested space. They avoided political arguments. They signed trade agreements and kept to themselves. When provoked, they responded with calm messages and careful diplomacy. Other species mistook this for weakness. Pirates tested human cargo routes. Minor border powers pushed against human mining zones. Probes drifted a little too close to Earth's defense perimeter. Humanity always responded the same way.
Calm.
Measured.
Quiet.
But on Earth, silence did not mean inaction. Deep beneath the surface of the planet, in reinforced command centers, leaders met without cameras or public broadcasts. Military officers stood beside scientists. Engineers presented data that never appeared in civilian networks. They spoke softly. They planned carefully. Above Earth's skies, construction platforms floated in orbit. Officially, they were building communication satellites and trade stations. But further out, past Mars and toward the asteroid belt, activity increased in places where no foreign observers were allowed. Human law had declared several regions restricted for safety reasons. No one questioned it. After all, humans were harmless. Near Jupiter, hidden behind the radiation storms and thick clouds, massive structures were taking shape. They were not beautiful like the shining crystal ships of advanced species. They were not curved or artistic. They were heavy. They were armored. They were built for war. Inside one of these structures, thousands of workers moved with purpose. Sparks flew as metal plates were welded together. Engines the size of cities were slowly assembled piece by piece. Entire asteroids had been hollowed out to supply materials. The project had a simple name: Atlas. Even most humans did not know it existed. Back in the Galactic Council, discussions about Earth continued with mild interest. "They expand slowly," one representative observed. "They lack aggression," another said. "They will either grow stronger in time," a third added, "or they will be absorbed by someone who is." The chamber filled with quiet laughter. No one noticed that human observers never reacted to the jokes. They simply recorded everything. Years passed. Human colonies spread to the moons of Saturn and the edges of the Kuiper Belt. Mining stations pulled rare elements from drifting rocks. Research facilities studied dark energy fluctuations in deep space. Every civilian project had a hidden purpose. Every research grant had a second layer. Every expansion had a defensive advantage built into it. On Earth, children grew up hearing stories of ancient wars from their own history. They learned about mistakes, about destruction, about how close humanity had once come to ending itself. Their leaders had not forgotten those lessons. They knew something the galaxy did not. Peace was never permanent. It was only protected. One evening, in a quiet control room near Jupiter, a senior officer stood before a large observation window. His name was Admiral Hayes. His hair had turned gray over the years, but his eyes were sharp. Before him floated the nearly completed structure of Atlas. It was not just a ship. It was larger than many space stations. Its hull was layered with experimental alloys. Along its spine ran structures that housed weapons never tested outside simulations. Behind it, partially hidden in the darkness, were others. Not one, not two, many, each in different stages of completion. A young technician approached the admiral. "Sir," she said carefully, foreign scans increased again near the outer belt. Hayes nodded slowly. Let them scan, he replied. They won't see anything important. The technician hesitated. Do you think they suspect? Hayes looked at the unfinished warship.
No, he said.
They believe what they want to believe. Far beyond the solar system, a powerful alien empire expanded rapidly. They conquered smaller systems and absorbed weaker civilizations. Their fleets were vast. Their commanders were proud. They had noticed humanity, not as a threat, but as an opportunity. Earth sits on valuable routes, one of their generals said during a strategic briefing. Their colonies are thinly defended. And their response to pressure? Another asked.
Minimal.
Diplomatic. The general smiled. Good. Back in the darkness near Jupiter, Atlas powered up one of its internal reactors for the first time. Energy surged through its core. Lights flickered across its surface. For a brief moment, space itself seemed to bend slightly around it. Inside, engineers cheered quietly. Admiral Hayes did not smile. He knew this was only the beginning. Humanity did not seek war. They truly did not. But they had studied the patterns of the galaxy. They had seen how empires rose and crushed the unprepared. They had watched species disappear from records after refusing to submit. They had learned one simple rule. If the storm is coming, you do not shout at it. You build a shelter. And, if necessary, you build something stronger than the storm itself. The galaxy believed humanity was soft, peaceful, harmless. It did not know that in the silence of deep space, among drifting rocks and gas giants, humanity was preparing its answer. And when that answer was finally revealed, the word, harmless, would never be spoken again. The border incident. The mining colony near Saturn was small but important. It floated above the pale rings of the giant planet, connected by metal bridges and long docking arms. Thousands of workers lived there. They mined rare crystals from nearby asteroids and refined fuel for deep space travel. It was quiet work, far from politics and war. Families lived there too. Children studied in small classrooms with large windows that showed the bright curve of Saturn below. Workers ate in common halls and shared stories about Earth. Life was simple, safe. At least that was what they believed. One morning, the long-range sensors detected unknown ships entering the outer system. The signal was strong. Military. The station commander, Captain Arun Malik, stood in the control room and stared at the display. Dozens of massive warships had appeared beyond the orbit of Titan. Their hulls were dark and sharp, covered with weapons. Everyone knew who they were. The Dravik Empire. They were known across the galaxy for expansion. They had conquered 3 small civilizations in the past decade. Their fleets moved fast, struck hard, and left nothing behind. Captain Malik opened a communication channel. This is a civilian mining colony under protection of the United Earth Directorate, he said calmly. State your purpose. For several seconds, there was only silence. Then a harsh voice replied. You occupy territory of interest to the Dravik Empire. You will surrender control immediately. Malik kept his voice steady. This system is recognized by the Galactic Council as human territory. A short laugh echoed through the speakers. The Council does not command us. Before Malik could answer, alarms screamed through the station. The first strike hit without warning. A beam of blue energy tore through one of the outer platforms. Metal exploded outward into space. Workers were thrown into vacuum before emergency shields could activate. More shots followed. Human defense drones launched from hidden bays, firing plasma bursts toward the attacking ships. But the drones were small. The Dravik fleet was overwhelming. Missiles streaked through space and slammed into the station's outer ring. Explosions lit up the darkness like small suns. Inside the colony, people ran through corridors as lights flickered. Emergency doors sealed automatically. Children cried as teachers guided them toward shelters. Captain Malik shouted orders. Activate full shield. Evacuate to inner core. Send distress signal to Earth. But deep down, he knew help would not arrive in time. The Dravik ships moved closer, their massive forms blocking out the distant stars. One of their cruisers fired a focused blast directly at the station's central reactor. The impact shook everything. The shield shattered. The reactor core destabilized. Malik looked at the screen as warning symbols filled the air around him. He understood what would happen next. He opened one final channel to Earth. "This is Saturn Colony 7, he said quietly. "We are under full assault. Civilian casualties are extreme." He paused as another explosion ripped through the structure. "We did not provoke this." The transmission cut off as the reactor went critical. From a distance, the colony disappeared in a burst of white light. Debris scattered across Saturn's rings, glowing for a few moments before fading into darkness. The Dravik fleet did not stop there. They broadcast the destruction across open galactic channels. A clear message followed. "This is the fate of those who mistake caution for strength. Humanity will remain small, or humanity will not remain." Across the galaxy, civilizations watched the footage. Some were shocked. Others were not surprised. In the Galactic Council chamber, voices argued loudly. "This is an act of war. They attack civilians. We must respond." But the Dravik Empire was powerful. Many council members feared open conflict. After hours of debate, no decision was made. On Earth, the news arrived in silence. There were no public speeches at first. No emotional broadcasts. In a secure underground chamber, world leaders sat around a circular table. Large screens showed the final moments of the colony. The faces of the dead appeared one by one. No one spoke for a long time. Admiral Hayes stood at the back of the room. His expression did not change, but his hands were clenched behind him. Finally, the Secretary General broke the silence. "Casualty count. 42,000 confirmed," an officer replied softly. "More still unaccounted for." Another pause. "They broadcasted intentionally," someone said. "Yes," Hayes answered. "It was not just an attack. It was a message." The room grew very still. "And our response?" the Secretary General asked. Hayes stepped forward. "Prepared," he said. In orbit around Jupiter, hidden facilities came alive. Massive doors opened slowly. Power surged through long-dormant systems. Warships that had never been seen by foreign eyes began activating one by one. Engines hummed with deep, controlled power. Weapons calibrated. Shields expanded in silent fields of distorted space. A coded message spread across human military networks. Phase 1 begins. There were no angry speeches to the galaxy. No public threats. Only movement. From the darkness near Jupiter, the first of the Atlas-class warships detached from its construction frame. Its engines ignited with a low, steady glow. It turned slowly toward the outer system, toward where the Dravik fleet had last been detected. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, representatives were still arguing when a new alert interrupted them. Multiple unknown human warships had entered interstellar space. And they were not small. The footage of Saturn's destroyed colony continued to play across galactic networks. But something had changed. For the first time, the galaxy was not laughing at humanity. It was watching.
Carefully.
Because the quiet species had finally moved. The hidden fleet. The galaxy had seen human ships before. Small patrol craft. Cargo vessels. Research cruisers. But what left the solar system that day was something entirely different. Beyond the orbit of Pluto, space twisted softly as massive shapes emerged from hidden jump points. One after another, dark warships appeared in perfect formation. They were thick, armored, and heavy. No shining curves. No artistic designs. They looked built for one purpose.
War.
At the front of the formation moved the largest of them all, the Atlas. It was longer than most alien cruisers and carried engines that glowed with deep blue light. Along its spine were mounted enormous rail cannons. Beneath its hull were sealed chambers that held weapons the galaxy had never seen. Inside the command bridge, Admiral Hayes stood calmly. Around him, officers worked in focused silence. No one panicked. No one celebrated. This was not revenge driven by anger. This was response. "Fleet status?" Hayes asked. 32 capital ships active, replied Commander Rafi. Support vessels ready. Stealth screen engaged. Any tracking from foreign probes?
Minimal.
We are masking most of our energy signature. Hayes nodded. Good. Maintain course. The fleet accelerated toward the outer systems. Far away, the Dravik Empire celebrated. Their broadcast of Saturn Colony 7 had spread across the galaxy. They believed humanity would retreat. They believed fear would keep Earth quiet. Inside a grand war chamber on their homeworld, Dravik generals studied star maps. The humans will complain, one general said. They will send messages to the council. And if they attempt retaliation, another asked. They lack the strength. Confident laughter filled the chamber. None of them knew that human ships were already moving beyond their scanning range. In deep space, between systems, the hidden fleet traveled in silence. Unlike most civilizations, humanity had studied something others ignored: logistics, supply lines, manufacturing speed, redundancy. Every Atlas-class ship carried internal factories capable of repairing hull damage and producing ammunition mid-flight. They were designed for long wars, but they were also designed to end wars quickly. Inside one of the lower decks, a young weapons officer named Iqbal stared at a sealed chamber labeled Core Breaker System. He had trained on simulations for years. He knew its power, but he had never seen it activated. He swallowed nervously and returned to his station. On the bridge, long-range sensors finally detected the Dravik Border Patrol. 5 enemy cruisers guarding a mining system recently claimed by the Empire. Hayes studied the display. Open a channel, he said. The communication beam locked onto the nearest Dravik ship. After a few seconds, a harsh face appeared on the screen. You are entering restricted Dravik territory, the alien commander said sharply. Turn back immediately. Hayes did not raise his voice. You attacked a civilian colony, he replied. You broadcasted it as a threat. Silence. That system is now ours, the Dravik commander answered. Weak species do not hold territory for long. Hayes looked at the fleet formation around him. We are here to clarify something, he said calmly. The Dravik commander laughed. You have brought 5 ships against our empire? Hayes' eyes did not change. Look again. Behind the Atlas, space shifted. More human warships exited jump space in perfect alignment. Not 5. Not 10. Dozens. The Dravik commander's expression faltered. What is this? This, Hayes said quietly, is the part we did not show you. The human fleet spread outward, surrounding the patrol ships at a distance. No shots were fired. Not yet. Last warning, Hayes transmitted. Power down your weapons. Prepare to withdraw. The Dravik commander hesitated only a second. Fire. Energy beams shot toward the Atlas. But something strange happened. The beams bent. The human ships activated distortion shields that warped local gravity fields. The incoming attacks curved away harmlessly, missing their targets completely. Dravik crews stared at their screens in disbelief. That is impossible, one shouted. Target their engines, the commander ordered. Human rail cannons charged. The first shot fired. A solid projectile, accelerated to near-light speed, crossed the distance in a blink. It pierced through a Dravik cruiser's side armor and exited the other end. The ship went dark instantly. No explosion. Just silence. The remaining Dravik vessels attempted to retreat. They were too slow. Within 3 minutes, all 5 ships were disabled. Their weapons destroyed. Their engines offline. The human fleet did not finish them. They waited. Transmit this clearly, Hayes ordered. A system-wide message echoed through Dravik space. Saturn Colony 7 was civilian. You attacked without warning. This was your first and only mercy. The disabled ships drifted helplessly. Human vessels began scanning deeper into Dravik territory. And what they found confirmed something important. The Dravik Empire was mobilizing.
Their full fleet was gathering.
Back on the Atlas Bridge, Commander Rafi spoke quietly. They are calling reinforcements. Hayes folded his hands behind his back. Good, he said. He turned to face the starfield ahead. Let them bring everything. The hidden fleet adjusted formation and moved forward, not retreating, not hesitating. For the first time in galactic history, the Dravik Empire felt uncertainty. And the galaxy, watching from a distance, began to understand something terrifying. Humanity had never been weak. It had simply been preparing. And now the hidden fleet was no longer hidden. The first demonstration. The news of the destroyed patrol ships spread quickly through Dravik space. 5 cruisers lost. Not damaged. Not captured. Disabled in minutes. The Dravik Empire did not accept this quietly. Deep inside their central command world, alarms rang through military towers. Generals gathered around a massive holographic map. Red lights marked the last known position of the human fleet. "They dare enter our territory," one general growled. "They think one small victory changes balance," another said. Orders were given immediately. A major military outpost near the outer border was selected as the next line of defense. It was heavily fortified. Dozens of battleships guarded it. Orbital cannons circled a large resource moon nearby. If the humans advanced, they would be crushed there. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued forward in complete formation. Inside the Atlas, Admiral Hayes watched silent reports flow across his display. The Dravik were gathering strength exactly where predicted. Commander Rafi spoke quietly. "They believe we will attack the outpost directly." Hayes nodded once. "We will not." Instead of rushing forward, the human fleet slowed down. Then something unexpected happened. Only one ship moved ahead. The Atlas. The rest of the fleet remained at a safe distance, holding position in deep space. Observers across the galaxy noticed this immediately. Galactic Council members watched from secure channels. Independent traders paused their routes to observe. Even neutral civilizations focused long-range scanners toward the border. One human ship was approaching a full military base. Inside the Dravik outpost, commanders stared at the incoming signal. "One vessel?" a Dravik officer asked in disbelief. "Yes," replied another. "Massive energy readings, but alone." The station commander gave a sharp laugh. "Arrogant creatures." Weapons locked onto the approaching Atlas. Hundreds of targeting systems focused on its heavy frame, but the Atlas did not fire. Instead, it stopped at extreme range, just outside the reach of most defensive cannons. A communication beam activated. The Dravik commander appeared on the main screen of the Atlas bridge. "You come alone," he said with a cruel smile. "Do humans wish to surrender?" Hayes stood straight. "You attacked civilians," he repeated calmly. "You were warned." "You destroyed patrol ships in our territory," the Dravik replied angrily. "This is war." Hayes did not argue. "This is not war," he said. The Dravik commander frowned. "Then what is it?" Hayes gave a simple answer. "A demonstration." The transmission ended. Confusion spread across the Dravik command center. "What do they mean?" an officer asked. Before anyone could respond, the Atlas began to change. Along its lower hull, massive armored plates slowly opened. Inside, a large circular structure rotated into position. It hummed with deep energy. Power readings surged beyond anything Dravik scanners had ever recorded. "Charge detected," shouted a sensor operator. "Unknown weapon system." "Fire all batteries," the commander ordered. Hundreds of plasma beams and missile streams launched toward the Atlas. Once again, space bent around the human ship. The distortion shields activated fully, curving and absorbing most of the incoming fire. Some blasts struck the outer armor, but the hull barely reacted. Then the weapon fired. A silent pulse shot forward. Not a beam of light, not a missile, but a wave of compressed gravity. It crossed the distance in seconds. It did not hit the station. It did not hit the fleet. It struck the resource moon orbiting near the outpost. For one long moment, nothing happened. Then the moon trembled. Its surface cracked in perfect lines, like glass under pressure. Mountains collapsed inward. Oceans of molten rock erupted. The entire moon began folding into itself. Dravik officers watched in horror as gravity crushed the celestial body from the inside. In less than a minute, the moon imploded, shrinking smaller and smaller before breaking apart into dust and debris. The shockwave rippled through space, shaking nearby ships. Silence filled every command center. The Atlas powered down its weapon. The Dravik outpost remained untouched. The human ship had destroyed a moon with a single shot and had chosen not to aim at them. A new transmission opened. Hayes' face appeared once more. "We could have targeted your station," he said calmly. "We did not." The Dravik commander's voice shook slightly. You destroyed a planetary body." Hayes answered simply yes. Across the galaxy, observers sat frozen. Never before had a single warship demonstrated that level of controlled destruction without wiping out its enemy. The message was clear. Power beyond imagination. Control beyond expectation. "We will not repeat this warning," Hayes continued. "Power down your weapons.
Stand down.
Or the next target will not be empty." The Dravik fleet near the outpost hesitated. Ships shifted nervously. Weapons remained locked, but no one dared fire again. The station commander's confidence had disappeared. He knew what the gravity pulse had shown. If one ship could do that, what could the rest of the fleet do? Slowly, one by one, Dravik ships powered down their main cannons. Defensive shields lowered. The outpost fell silent. On the Atlas Bridge, no one cheered. This was not victory. It was proof. Hayes turned slightly toward Commander Rafi. "Transmit full recording to the Galactic Council," he ordered. "Yes, sir." The footage spread across every major channel in known space. A moon collapsing under human control. No random destruction. No loss of civilian life this time. Just a statement. For the first time, fear replaced doubt in the minds of the galaxy. Humanity had spoken, and it had done so without raising its voice. The first demonstration was complete. The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. The council panics. The recording of the destroyed moon reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. In trade stations, in military bases, in hidden pirate dens, screens replayed the same moment again and again. A moon cracking, folding inward, turning into dust under a single controlled human strike. It was not wild destruction. That made it worse. It was calm. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, chaos broke out. Voices overlapped in fear and anger. "This is unacceptable. They destroyed a celestial body. If they can do that to a moon, what can they do to a planet?" Holographic projections of the event hovered above the central floor. The gravity wave was analyzed frame by frame. Energy readings were compared. Predictions were calculated. Every calculation led to the same conclusion. Humanity now possessed strategic power greater than most empires combined. The council leader struck the floor with a signal rod to restore order. "Silence," he demanded. Gradually, the chamber quieted. A representative from a distant star cluster spoke first. "This cannot be ignored. The Dravik Empire attacks civilians, yes. But humanity's response changes the balance of power." Another added, "If humans choose expansion now, no one could stop them." Fear moved through the room like a cold wind. For decades, humanity had been considered a minor species, polite, careful, predictable. Now they were something else. Unmeasured. Uncertain. An urgent message arrived from Dravik space. The Dravik Empire was mobilizing its full fleet. Thousands of warships were gathering near their core systems. They were not surrendering. They were preparing for total war. Back on Earth, there were still no public celebrations. News channels reported the moon's destruction in controlled tones. Citizens watched in stunned silence. Some felt pride. Others felt fear. In a secure underground chamber, Earth's leaders met again. Admiral Hayes appeared through a live transmission from the Atlas. "They are calling in everything," he reported calmly. "This will not end with one demonstration." The Secretary General folded his hands. "Are we ready?" Hayes answered without hesitation. "Yes." "Casualty projections?" "If we engage fully?" Hayes paused briefly. "High." On both sides. The room grew heavy. One leader spoke softly. "Is there another path?" Hayes looked directly into the camera. They attacked 42,000 civilians, he said. If we retreat now, we invite more attacks. Not only against us, against every smaller species watching. Silence followed. The Secretary General gave a slow nod. Then we continue. Across human space, hidden facilities increased production speed. Shipyards near Jupiter accelerated construction. Supply vessels moved in protected convoys. Defense grids around Earth and Mars powered to full capacity. Humanity was not shouting threats.
It was fortifying.
Meanwhile, in Dravik territory, the mood was different. The destruction of the moon had shaken their military pride. Some commanders argued for caution. They have weapons beyond our records, one admiral warned. Our honor demands response. Another replied fiercely. If we bow now, every empire will see weakness. Their emperor listened in silence. Finally, he gave his order. All fleets advance to the border. We will crush them in open battle. The command spread quickly. Thousands of Dravik ships began moving as one massive armada. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, panic grew stronger. If those two powers clash fully, entire systems may be destroyed. We must force negotiation. But who can force humanity? The human representatives finally stood to speak. They had remained silent through most of the debate. Their ambassador's voice was steady. Humanity did not start this conflict. We did not attack first. We responded. A council member challenged him. By collapsing a moon? We chose an empty target, the ambassador replied. We could have chosen otherwise. That answer chilled the chamber. Another member asked carefully, what does humanity want? The ambassador did not hesitate. Security. Recognition of our borders. An end to attacks on civilian populations. Nothing more. And if the Dravik refuse? The ambassador's eyes did not shift. Then we will ensure they cannot attack anyone again. Those words echoed across the chamber. Not loud. Not emotional. Certain. Far from politics and debate, the human fleet advanced slowly toward a meeting point near a dying red star. It was neutral space, wide and empty. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge, watching tactical displays fill with red markers. The full Dravik armada was approaching from the opposite direction. Numbers far beyond the small patrol group they had defeated before. Commander Rafi spoke quietly. They outnumber us 5-1. Hayes nodded. Yes. Do we wait for reinforcements? Hayes looked at the main screen, where the red star burned weakly in the distance. No, he said. We draw the line here. Across the galaxy, sensors locked onto that region of space. Civilizations paused trade routes. Fleets stopped moving. Everyone understood. This would not be a small border clash. This would decide the future balance of power. The once harmless species now stood face to face with a conquering empire. The Council feared destruction. The Dravik demanded dominance. Humanity offered one final condition: peace or proof. As the two massive forces closed distance near the dying star, a new kind of silence fell over the galaxy. Not mockery, not doubt, anticipation. Because now everyone wanted to know the same thing. Had humanity only shown a fraction of its strength? Or had that collapsing moon been just the beginning? The line drawn. The dying red star burned weakly in the darkness. Its light was dim and unstable, sending slow waves of radiation across the empty system. There were no planets nearby. No colonies. No trade routes. It was the perfect place for a battle. On one side of the system, the Dravik armada arrived first. Thousands of warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in tight formation. The cruisers, destroyers, carriers, heavy artillery ships, more than most civilizations had ever seen gathered in one place. Their engines lit up the darkness like a second sun. Inside the flagship of the Dravik Emperor, commanders watched the tactical display fill with red markers. Human fleet detected, an officer announced. Distance, 20 million kilometers. The Emperor stood tall, armored and silent. Numbers, he asked. 84 capital ships. Additional support craft unknown. Murmurs spread across the command chamber. 84 against thousands. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. They come to die. On the other side of the system, the human fleet emerged. The Atlas moved at the center, surrounded by identical heavy warships. Their formation was clean and steady. No wasted movement. No panic. On the bridge of the Atlas, Admiral Hayes stood calmly. Commander Rafi looked at the tactical map. "They have committed everything," she said quietly. "No reserve fleets detected." Hayes nodded slowly. "They believe this will end us." "And will it?" Rafi asked. Hayes did not answer immediately. Instead, he gave a simple order. "Open a system-wide channel." The transmission spread across the entire battlefield. Every Dravik ship received it. So did the Galactic Council observers watching from distant space. Hayes' voice filled the void. "This is Admiral Hayes of the United Earth Fleet." He paused for a second. "You attacked civilians. You refused withdrawal. You gathered for total war." The Dravik Emperor listened, without speaking. Hayes continued. "This is your final chance. Stand down. Return to your borders. Offer reparations for Saturn Colony 7. The message echoed across the system. For a brief moment, even the red star seemed still. Inside the Dravik flagship, generals argued loudly. "They are afraid. They bluff. They cannot defeat our numbers." The Emperor raised his hand, silencing them. He stepped forward and activated his reply. "You destroyed one moon and believe yourself powerful," he said coldly. "We have crushed civilizations older than yours. We will crush you." He cut the transmission. Back on the Atlas, Rafi exhaled quietly. "They refuse." Hayes gave one final order. "Deploy line formation. Defensive posture." The human fleet shifted smoothly. Ships spread out, forming a wide defensive arc between the Dravik Armada and the inner human territories beyond. They did not advance. They did not retreat. They simply held position. Across the galaxy, observers noticed something strange. The humans were not charging forward in anger. They were drawing a line. The Dravik Armada began to move. Thousands of ships accelerated together, weapons charging, energy signatures rising rapidly. The battlefield sensors filled with warning alerts. Inside the Atlas, lights dimmed as power diverted to shields. "Enemy weapons at full charge," Rafi reported. "Estimated firing range in 2 minutes." Hayes folded his hands behind his back. "Hold." The distance closed. 1 minute. 30 seconds.
10.
The Dravik Emperor gave his command. "Fire." The void exploded with light. Thousands of energy beams, missiles, and plasma bursts streaked toward the human fleet. The attack was overwhelming, a storm of destruction meant to erase everything in its path. On the Atlas, Rafi braced herself. Impact in 5 seconds. Hayes did not move. "Activate full distortion grid." The human ships responded instantly. A strange shimmer spread across their formation. Space itself began to ripple and bend. The first wave of Dravik fire reached them and curved away. Beams twisted off course. Missiles spiraled into empty space. Plasma bursts scattered as if striking invisible walls. The battlefield turned chaotic. Dravik gunners adjusted aim and fired again. The result was the same. Human ships remained untouched, hidden inside warped gravity fields that distorted incoming trajectories. Shock filled the Dravik command chamber. "They are bending space," an officer shouted. "Impossible," another cried. The Emperor stared at the screen in disbelief. The human fleet had not fired a single shot. They had simply endured the full power of the Dravik Armada, without damage. On the Atlas bridge, Rafi looked at the status panel. "Shield stability at 98%, she reported quietly. Hayes gave a slow nod. "Prepare countermeasure." Across the line of human ships, large structures along their hulls began to glow. This was not the core breaker. This was something new. Energy built slowly, steadily, controlled. The Dravik fleet continued firing, but their confidence was breaking. "Should we retreat?" one general whispered. The Emperor's voice shook for the first time. "Maintain attack." But doubt had entered his mind. On the Atlas, Hayes gave the final command. "Fire warning strike. Dozens of focus beams launched from the human fleet, not aimed at ships, not aimed at life. They targeted the empty space directly in front of the advancing Dravik armada. When the beams converged, they tore open space itself for a brief second. A controlled rupture. A visible tear in reality. The shockwave from the distortion rolled forward, disabling engines and weapon systems across hundreds of Dravik ships instantly. Not destroyed. Disabled. The armada slowed abruptly. Silence followed. Human ships held position. They had not advanced an inch. They had not destroyed the enemy fleet. They had simply stopped it. Across the galaxy, fear became something else. Understanding. Humanity was not fighting for conquest. They were enforcing a boundary. The line had been drawn near the dying star. And the Dravik Empire had just learned what stood on the other side of it. The battle that wasn't. The battlefield near the dying red star fell into heavy silence. Hundreds of Dravik ships drifted without power. Their engines were dead. Their weapons offline. They were not destroyed, but they were helpless. Behind them, thousands more ships remained active, but they had stopped advancing. No one had expected this. Inside the Dravik flagship, fear spread like poison. Reports came in rapidly. Engine failure across multiple divisions. Primary weapons unresponsive. Navigation systems frozen. The Emperor gripped the edge of his command platform. His fleet was the largest in their history. It had crushed entire civilizations. Now it could not even move forward. On the human side, the fleet remained perfectly still. The Atlas stood at the center of the formation, its hull glowing softly, with controlled energy. Around it, 84 capital ships maintained the defensive arc. They had not taken a single confirmed hit. On the bridge, Commander Rafi spoke quietly. Enemy forward divisions disabled. Rear divisions holding position. No retreat yet. Admiral Hayes nodded slowly. They are deciding whether to continue. Should we press the attack? Rafi asked. Hayes shook his head. Not yet. The red star flickered weakly between the two forces. Radiation waves passed harmlessly through the human distortion shields. Across the galaxy, millions watched the live feeds. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. No one argued anymore. They were witnessing something new. War without chaos. Power without madness. Inside the Dravik command chamber, generals argued in panic. We must withdraw. If we retreat now, we show weakness. They have not even used full weapons. The Emperor raised his hand again, forcing silence. How many of our ships remain combat-ready? He asked. Approximately 2,000, Majesty, an officer replied. The Emperor looked at the tactical map. The human fleet was still vastly outnumbered. But numbers no longer felt important. He made his decision. All active ships advance. Overwhelm their shields by mass fire. We break them by force. The order spread quickly. The remaining Dravik ships surged forward once more, pushing past their disabled allies. Weapons charged brighter than before. On the Atlas, warning signals flashed. They are committing fully, Rafi reported. Hayes gave a slow breath. So be it. He turned slightly toward the weapons control station. Prepare the core breaker. Across the bridge, a subtle tension filled the air. This weapon had only been demonstrated once, against a moon. Now it would be used in battle. Deep inside the Atlas, massive chambers opened. Energy gathered into a single controlled stream. The power reading climbed higher and higher. Outside, the Dravik fleet unleashed another storm of fire. Beams struck the distortion grid again, bending and twisting away. But the sheer volume of fire caused shield levels to dip slightly. 90%, Rafi said. 87. Hayes did not look worried. Target the enemy flagship, he ordered calmly. The Dravik Emperor watched the human ship glow brighter. What are they doing? One general whispered. Then the core breaker fired. A single focused beam of condensed stellar energy shot across the battlefield. It moved too fast to track. It struck the Dravik flagship directly. There was no explosion. No fireball. The ship simply vanished. Not shattered. Not broken. Erased. The space where it had been was empty. For a moment, the entire battlefield froze. The Emperor was gone. The command ship, symbol of Dravic power, no longer existed. Shock waves of fear passed through the remaining fleet. Command structures collapsed instantly. Officers shouted conflicting orders. Some ships began retreating without permission. On the Atlas Bridge, Rafi stared at the empty spot on the display. Target eliminated, she confirmed quietly. Hayes gave his next order immediately. Disable the remaining forward assault ships. Human rail cannons fired in precise sequence. Each shot targeted engines and weapon arrays. Ships were not destroyed. They were crippled with surgical accuracy. Within minutes, organized resistance ended. Dravic vessels powered down across the battlefield. The once proud armada now drifted in silence around the dying Red Star. The battle had lasted less than 10 minutes. On the Galactic Council's live feed, no one spoke. They had expected devastation. Instead, they had seen control. Humanity had faced thousands of warships and chosen not to wipe them out completely. They had ended the threat with one calculated strike. On the Atlas, Rafi exhaled slowly. Enemy fleet combat ineffective, she said. They are transmitting surrender signals. Hayes looked at the drifting ships. Open channel. A frightened Dravic officer appeared on screen. His voice shook. We request ceasefire. Our Emperor is dead. We will stand down. Hayes studied him for a long moment. Transmit this to all Dravic forces, Hayes said. You attack civilians. You ignored warning. You advanced after demonstration. He paused. This conflict ends now. Return to your borders. Prepare to negotiate reparations. The Dravic officer nodded quickly.
Yes.
Yes, we agree. The channel closed. The human fleet did not cheer. There was no celebration on the bridge. Only quiet professionalism. The Red Star flickered again, casting dim light over the defeated armada. Commander Rafi looked at Hayes. It's over, she said. Hayes stared at the empty space where the flagship had once been. No, he replied softly. This was only the lesson. Behind the battlefield, recording drones had captured every second. Across the galaxy, one truth settled deeply into every government and military command. Humanity had not roared wildly. They had not burned entire systems. They had shown exactly how much power they possessed. And they had used only what was necessary. The battle near the dying star would be remembered not for destruction, but for how quickly it ended, and how easily humanity could have done far worse. The display of power, the battlefield near the dying Red Star, remained quiet. Dravic ships drifted without formation. Many were damaged. Many were powerless. None dared to fire again. Human vessels stayed in position, their formation unbroken. The Atlas rested at the center, like a silent judge. The war could have ended there. But Admiral Hayes knew something important. Fear fades. Memory weakens. If humanity wanted lasting peace, they needed more than victory. They needed understanding. On the bridge of the Atlas, Commander Rafi studied new reports. Dravic Leadership Council requesting formal negotiations, she said. Galactic Council calling emergency summit. Hayes nodded. Inform them we will attend. But not here? Rafi asked. Hayes looked at the tactical display.
No.
Somewhere everyone can see. Within days, a message spread across every major system in the galaxy. Humanity invited all observing civilizations to witness a controlled demonstration in neutral space near the galactic core. Not a threat. Not a battle. A demonstration. Curiosity and fear pulled countless long-range sensors toward the chosen location. Even species that avoided politics turned their attention there. Near the galactic core, a dead star floated alone in darkness. It had burned out long ago, leaving behind a cold and lifeless sphere. Around it, dozens of human ships took position. The Atlas stood closest to the dead star. Farther away, observers from many civilizations watched carefully. Dravic representatives were present too, silent and tense. Inside the Atlas, engineers prepared a system rarely discussed outside top command. It was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was something far more powerful. Stellar compression array ready, An officer reported. Energy level stable. Admiral Hayes gave the final confirmation. Begin sequence. Massive emitters extended from the Atlas and several supporting ships. Beams of controlled energy locked onto the dead star. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then the star began to glow faintly. Observers leaned forward in disbelief. The cold mass slowly heated as gravitational forces tightened around it. Human ships adjusted their output carefully, precisely balancing pressure and energy flow. The dead star began shrinking. Not exploding. Not collapsing wildly. Shrinking in a controlled manner. Gas and dust from the surrounding space were drawn inward. The process was slow, steady, deliberate. Hours passed as billions watched. The star became smaller and brighter. Finally, it reached a critical point. Instead of collapsing into chaos, it ignited. Light burst outward in a controlled flare, forming a stable, shining sphere. A new star burned where a dead one had once drifted. Perfectly balanced.
Perfectly contained.
The stellar compression array powered down. The human fleet remained in position as the newborn star shone brightly near the galactic core. Silence spread across the watching civilizations. They had seen empires destroy worlds. They had seen fleets burn planets. But this was creation. Controlled creation of a star. The message was clear without words. If humanity could restart a star, they could end one. A system-wide transmission opened. Admiral Hayes appeared on every screen. "We do not seek domination," he said calmly. "We do not seek territory beyond our borders." He gestured slightly toward the shining new star. "This is what we are capable of." He paused. "We can destroy. We can defend. And we can create." His voice remained steady. "We will not threaten. We will not shout. But if attacked again, we will respond without hesitation." The transmission ended. No dramatic music. No celebration. Just truth. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, representatives sat speechless. One elder member finally spoke in a low voice. "They can control stars." Another replied quietly, "And they chose not to use that power against us." Dravic representatives lowered their heads. Their empire had once ruled through fear. Now they understood something greater. Humanity did not rule by fear alone. They ruled by restraint. Back on the Atlas, Commander Rafi watched long-range scans of the new star stabilizing. "All systems normal," she said softly. Hayes folded his hands behind his back. "Send confirmation to Earth." In distant human space, billions watched the new star shine on their screens. There was no cheering in the streets. Only quiet pride. They had not started the war. They had not conquered an empire. They had drawn a line. And then they had shown the galaxy something it had never seen before. Power guided by control.
Strength guided by choice.
As the human fleet slowly withdrew from the galactic core, one truth settled deeply into every government and military command center. Humanity had given its final warning. Not through rage. Not through endless destruction. But through a display so clear, so absolute, that no translation was needed. The galaxy understood. And it would never forget the sight of a dead star brought back to life by the same species that had erased a warship without a trace. The apology. The Dravic Empire was quiet. For the first time in centuries, its leaders did not speak loudly, did not argue over expansion or conquest. Even the emperor, once proud and unyielding, sat silently on his throne, staring at the holographic display of human fleets near the galactic core. The destruction of one moon. The disabling of thousands of warships. The creation of a new star. All of it had been deliberate, controlled, and precise. Every act sent a single message. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was final. The Dravic Emperor finally spoke, his voice low and unsteady. "Summon the ambassadors. Prepare an apology." Shock and confusion rippled through the imperial court. The generals whispered among themselves. To bow before a species they had once considered insignificant felt impossible. Yet the images of the moon, The erased flagship and the new star left them no choice. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Observers from dozens of species crowded the virtual chamber. Every major civilization watched as representatives from the Dravic Empire appeared via secure channels. The Dravic ambassador's voice was formal, controlled, but heavy with shame. "We acknowledge the actions taken against humanity," he said. "The attack on Saturn Colony 7 was unjust. The broadcast was a mistake. We offer reparations and a formal apology to the United Earth Directorate." For centuries, the galaxy had seen few apologies issued by empires. Most were forced after defeat, often hollow, meant only to save face. But this apology was different. The humans had not destroyed the Dravic fleet completely. They had spared lives. They had shown power and restraint in equal measure. Admiral Hayes watched from the Atlas Bridge as the transmission played across human systems. His expression was calm. He had expected this. Commander Rafi leaned over his shoulder. "Do we accept?" she asked quietly. Hayes looked out at the red star in the distance, the faint glow of the galaxy stretching behind it. "We accept," he said. "But we do not forget." The apology included more than words. Dravic leaders agreed to return occupied systems, restore trade routes, and provide compensation for civilian losses. They pledged to respect human borders and to avoid interference in human expansion. For the first time, their species publicly acknowledged the strength of humanity. Across the galaxy, the news spread quickly. Traders, diplomats, and neutral civilizations discussed the event with astonishment. The story of Saturn Colony 7 had begun as tragedy, but humanity's response had changed the way every species would view humans forever. In the heart of human space, civilians watched transmissions from the galactic core. Children, too young to remember the full history of war, stared at screens showing stars and fleets. They did not cheer, for this was not a festival, but they felt something else: reassurance. Their species was strong, prepared, and measured. Meanwhile, the human fleet slowly returned to positions near the solar system. Ships that had once remained hidden now moved openly, their presence a quiet reminder to all who might consider aggression. In the Galactic Council chamber, debate continued, but the tone had shifted. The humans had not only defended themselves, they had reminded the galaxy that there were consequences for attacking the innocent. Other civilizations began to reconsider their alliances and strategies. Weakness would no longer be tolerated. Humanity had demonstrated a level of power and discipline unmatched in known space. Back on the Atlas, Hayes convened a meeting with his senior officers. "They will obey for now," he said. "But do not assume the galaxy will always remember this lesson." Commander Rafi nodded. "Do we continue building?" Hayes' eyes scanned the tactical displays showing fleet positions, newly completed warships, and defensive stations near Earth and Mars. "Yes," he said. "Always." Across the Dravic Empire, discussions began about internal reform. For decades, their leaders had ruled through fear. Now they had learned that the galaxy's perception had changed. Humility had been forced upon them by one species that had once been underestimated. In quiet corridors of power on Earth, scientists returned to their research. Engineers refined starship designs. Civilians continued life in cities that had never truly understood the threats beyond their skies. But all knew the truth. Humanity was no longer an upstart species. They were a power the galaxy could not ignore. And in the shadows of space, the Atlas-class fleet remained on alert. Not to strike, but to remind. Humanity had accepted the apology. But they had not dismantled their fleet. They had not surrendered their knowledge. Admiral Hayes spoke to his officers one last time before returning to command. "We have achieved peace for now," he said. "But the galaxy is always watching. They will test us again. And when they do, we must be ready. Always ready." The officers nodded. The hum of the Atlas engines was steady. Outside, stars shimmered quietly. Humanity had enforced its will with precision and wisdom. The message was simple. Humanity would protect itself. Humanity would act with control. And humanity's power was absolute, a lesson written not in threats, but in undeniable proof. For the first time in galactic history, humans were respected and feared, not for arrogance, not for conquest, but for restraint. And the galaxy would never forget it. Humanity's final warning. The galaxy changed after that day. News of the apology from the Dravic Empire, of the disabled fleets, of the moon collapsed and a star reborn, spread faster than any transmission before. Civilizations whispered. Empires reconsidered old grudges. Traders altered routes. Scientists debated what humans had done and what they could do next. But for humanity, nothing had changed. Their lives continued, quiet and controlled. Cities on Earth thrived, colonies on Mars expanded, and mining stations in the outer solar system hummed with activity. The ordinary hum of civilization went on, while in hidden orbital shipyards, the Atlas-class fleet continued to grow. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the Atlas, looking at the stars beyond the solar system. The fleet had returned to patrol positions near Jupiter, Saturn, and the asteroid belt. Each ship was ready, each system prepared for rapid deployment. Yet none of the warships fired again. There was no celebration, no loud announcement of victory. Only quiet readiness. Commander Rafi approached him. "Do you think the galaxy truly understands now?" Hayes did not turn. "Some do," he said slowly. "Others will test the lesson eventually. That is inevitable." "They will remember Saturn Colony 7, Rafi said. "And the star near the galactic core." "Yes," Hayes replied. "They will remember it. But memory fades. We must always be ready." In distant systems, former rivals now looked at humans differently. They understood that weakness invited attack, but restraint invited caution. Humanity had proven that power was not only in numbers or fleet size, it was in control, calculation, and the will to act decisively. Back on Earth, civilians remained largely unaware of the full scope of events. Media reported the apology from the Dravic Empire in neutral tones. Children learned that humans had defended themselves, but the rest was left unspoken. They did not need to know the weapons, the strategy, or the display of power that silenced fleets. Those lessons were reserved for the leaders, the officers, the engineers who maintained readiness. In the Galactic Council, the human representatives spoke carefully. They emphasized diplomacy, border protection, and the right of smaller species to live free from aggression. No threats were issued. No ultimatums demanded. The Council watched, sometimes uneasily, as the humans set a new standard for power paired with restraint. The Dravic Empire rebuilt its command structure. Officers who survived the disabled flagship worked quietly under the watchful eyes of their emperor. They were no longer reckless. They no longer assumed fear alone would maintain their power. Lessons had been learned, painfully and publicly. In the outer reaches of human space, engineers in orbital shipyards continued their work. New vessels emerged from construction bays, some larger, some faster, some equipped with systems that even Admiral Hayes had only seen in testing. Humanity was ready not just for retaliation, but for deterrence, a deterrence so absolute that no species would risk attacking civilians or territories under human protection again. Hayes walked through the command deck of the Atlas, watching officers at their stations. Every report, every sensor reading, every alert passed without panic. Years of preparation had honed this calm. The fleet moved with a silent discipline that no enemy could predict. He paused before the main viewing window. Stars stretched endlessly ahead. The galaxy was vast, full of potential allies and threats alike. And humanity, once underestimated, now held a presence that could not be ignored. A junior officer approached, voice hesitant. "Sir, will there be more tests?" Hayes looked at the young officer with a calm, steady gaze. "Tests are always coming. It is the way of the galaxy. Our duty is to be ready, to act decisively when needed, and to show the proper measure of strength. That is all." Silence followed. The stars moved slowly past the window. The fleet hummed softly with engines ready for instant action. In that quiet, humanity's message was clear, and it did not require words. Strength without restraint is destruction. Restraint without strength invites death. And the combination of both is invincible. The Dravic Empire and other species would not forget it. The display of power had silenced them once. It would serve as a warning for generations to come. On Earth, children looked at the night sky, unaware of the fleets moving quietly above. Scientists calculated orbital paths, miners worked the asteroids, and families lived their ordinary lives. But somewhere in the vastness of space, fleets and empires remembered. They remembered a species once considered harmless, now unmatched in control and strategy. They remembered a moon destroyed with precision, a star reborn under human guidance, and a single ship that erased a flagship without hesitation. Humanity had given the galaxy a final warning, not with anger, not with chaos, but with absolute clarity. The universe had learned a simple truth: underestimate humans at your own peril. Admiral Hayes turned from the viewing window. "Let's make sure we are always ready," he said softly. And the fleet, silent but alive, continued its patrol, a reminder that the quiet species of Earth had finally spoken, and the galaxy had no choice but to listen. Humanity's final warning was complete. The display of power had been made, and nothing in the galaxy would ever ignore it again.